It is 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. Don't know what time it is where you are, but welcome. Welcome. We have a few people joining in, so we'll continue as people join on in, but welcome everyone to the second quarter Raleigh-Durham and Twin Cities Tableau user group. Welcome everybody. Welcome to our family, our data fam up in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. So hopefully this evening, tonight, or this afternoon, wherever you are, will show that even in the midst of all the chaos and crisis and everything that's going on around us, the Tableau community, we are not only surviving, but we are thriving in the midst of all of this. So I am very excited about not only our leadership team and the guests that we have, but also our presenters, our speakers tonight. So let me first of all go ahead and pass it over to the Twin Cities Tug leadership team, and welcome guys. How are you?
Hi, thanks. So I'm Jim Van Sistine from the Twin Cities Tableau user group. For those of you who don't know me, we also have Serena and Trisha, and hopefully a few folks from Minneapolis have joined us. We want to thank Christopher and team here for letting us crash your party this month. We were looking at scheduling on the same day and saw the agenda you guys had packed, so we were glad we were able to just join forces here and help out.
We are too. Thank you so much. And with that, I saved this for our leadership, our team here. And as is not a Tableau group without it, but here's a hearty cheers to my fellow leaders and to our community here. So cheers, everyone. And to thank you again, Jim, and for the rest of the leadership team in the Twin Cities. All right. So also, those of you that don't know, this is the rest of our leadership team for the Raleigh-Durham Tableau user group. Gregory Lewandowski, Jesse Bickman. I don't see Ken Patton on, but hopefully he's able to join us tonight. And last but not least, certainly Paul McHale. This leadership team definitely makes these events possible. They pick up my slack and they make this the best possible Tableau user group, and it's all for you. So everything we do, every quarter, every time we meet, is all about this community. And so these gentlemen here and all the folks in the Twin City and all of our speakers are here because we are passionate about making this community it is a data fam. So we're all about making it the best possible thing that we can. So again, we are grateful for their leadership. We're grateful for the sponsor, co-sponsoring us with the Twin Cities. Again, this opportunity here being virtual allows us to do things that we never would have thought possible. So we could never probably meet in person with the Twin Cities Tug, but now we're able to do that, and also have, without, that kind of leads me to my next point. We would never be able to have the speakers that we have tonight without this great, unique opportunity. So we have some sensational talent here tonight, with Anya Ahern, with Alan Walker, with Kevin Taylor, and of course Luke Stenke as well. So we just have an amazing group tonight, and we want to celebrate them. We want to celebrate our community. So this meeting will be a little bit different because we do have an hour and a half, and we've got three amazing speakers with just content rich. This will be, there will not be a ton of opportunity for interactivity like our typical user group, but do not let that stop you from utilizing our Q&A section and the chat function. So we will be monitoring the Q&A and the chat throughout this, throughout the user group. And if there's time at the end of the presentations, then the speakers will answer a few questions. If not, feel free to hang on to the end. We'll take a few Q&A at the very end before we close out the evening. We've been told by Tableau that we've got the Zoom for the rest of the evening. So we'll be here until the last person leaves. Always, if you have any ideas about ways that we can better engage our data community or engage with one another, feel free to follow us again on Twitter at Twin Cities Tug, at RDU Tug, hashtag RDU Tug, and of course our email is rdutug@gmail.com. Can't forget it. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into our first presenter here. And yeah, let's talk about the evening real quick. So we'll go right into Kevin Taylor's presentation, and then Anya and Alan will hop on, followed by Luke at the very end, batting cleanup there. So so it is my pleasure. I'll go back to this screen really quick to introduce our first speaker, Kevin Taylor, our very own Raleighite or Raleighien. There's a whole Reddit sub-thread out there if you want to get lost down a rabbit hole, whatever that we like to call ourselves. So I've been working with Tableau for about 8 years now, and Kevin was one of the first people I met in the Tableau community. In fact, he was one of the presenters at our first Raleigh-Durham Tableau user group. Lots of stories there that we don't have time to mention, but he has served as a constant source of inspiration, of mentoring, and above all of friendship. So I'll let you tell more about himself. So without further ado, Kevin Taylor, let's give a big virtual welcome and thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris. I cannot share the screen until you give up the screen, apparently. So if you could give that up, I will share mine. Perfect. Let me know. Nope, you can't share it. See it? Yeah, now you should be able to see it. Perfect. So first, thank you. So first off, Chris, thank you very, very much for that warm introduction. I consider our friendship very valuable as well. So thank you very much. Tickled to hear that. To everybody else, I hope you're having an absolutely amazing day today. Speaking of amazing, I hope you've seen the lineup that follows me today. You mentioned baseball in the beginning there. I'm a baseball fan. I feel like the pitcher coming up to lead off the inning with all the power hitters right up after me. So you will get to hear them, I assure you. I'll get through mine. I gotta say, this is really a proud moment for me, sharing the virtual stage with these Zen Masters. One in particular here, Anya, I got to give you a shout out. I met Anya way back at DC, TC13 in Washington, DC. I was amazed by her then. Met her at Tapestry again later in Annapolis. Since then, my wife has adorned Anya.
Can't hear your audio.
Hey, Kevin, can anybody hear me?
Yeah, we can't hear Kevin.
I don't know if Kevin can even hear us.
Kevin can't hear us.
Somebody chat him.
Looks like he's joining again. He's left and he's joining again.
That was very weird. You know what we do at the Twin Cities Tug when we have awkward moments of silence while we're dealing with technical issues?
Please tell us, Serena.
We can go dance.
We do a get to know a member. So we obviously in person we just pick a volunteer from the audience, but virtually we've been having people raise their hands who would just like to, say their name, talk about how long they've been working with Tableau, what kind of data they work with, just some like really general basic information. So looks like Kevin is back though. So we'll maybe keep that in our back pocket.
That's
Serena,
great.
tell us about yourself.
Who
Who are
me?
you? Yes, you.
Oh, that's really, really funny because I've never actually forget to know member.
No better time than the present.
Kevin, do you want to switch it up and we can go and then we can swap our slot with you?
Yeah, is Kevin? Looks like he left.
He's having some real technical difficulties. Why don't Anya and I go and then
right.
we can swap? Does that sound okay?
Yep.
Yep. Sounds great.
Oh, perfect.
All right. And we're off. Woo! There's Gregory asking me about some glitter. Oh, I have to shut that window first. Sorry. So I quickly threw some glitter in because yeah, Gregory was like, "Where's the glitter?" So we had a glitter. Yay!
Thank you, Anya. So, all right. So at this point, I'll introduce our next speakers here. Everybody can hear me, or did I lose audio as well?
I hear you.
You're good, Greg.
Yep, you're good.
All right. So, you know, though Kevin didn't get the chance to present, I'm sure it is going to be incredible. Hopefully we'll be able to get him back on shortly. So my name is Gregory Lewandowski. I've been involved with the RDU TUG since the first meeting many, many years ago. I think Chris may remember when that was. And I have the pleasure of introducing a couple of friends of mine today who are our next speakers. I'm lucky enough to have met them through Tableau conference and through Tableau. I never would have known them otherwise. So the topic is going to be about building useful, where-focused dashboards for the new normal. And our two speakers are going to be Anya Ahern and Alan Walker. So Anya is the founder and managing director of DataBlick, which is a premier Tableau innovation and consulting firm. So her education was in economics and industrial design, which meld perfectly together and partner perfectly to create the visualizations that are both informative and beautiful. So she's helped to push the edges of data technology and create transformational customer outcomes for firms like Visa, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and the Department of Defense. She is also very active in volunteering, and she has worked with multiple nonprofits such as PATH, Bridges to Prosperity, World Food Program, UNICEF, ACLED, which is the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, and Equal Opportunity Schools. She is one of the founders of the, or helped to launch Women Plus Data initiatives within the Tableau community. And she's recently contributed to support the creation of the Tableau COVID-19 Data Hub, in addition to working on projects for Salesforce and Work.com to help companies get back to within the context of the new normal, following COVID-19. She is a Tableau Hall of Fame Zen Master, which means that she has been a Zen Master for 5 years running or more. She won 2012 Iron Viz Championship, and she is like 50 kinds of awesome. We also have Alan Walker, who is every bit as impressive as Anya, though I do not have as long of a bio about Alan. So Alan is a solution architect at Mapbox, and he has been working with data and data visualization and mapping for many, many, many years. He provides his customers with scalable solutions to their problems. He was a 6-time Tableau Zen Master from 2013 to 2018, and is also very active in the volunteering community, working with Tableau Foundation projects such as Visualize No Malaria, Bridges to Prosperity, Splash, and Op Fistula. And I will also add that his light Scottish accent is just, it lulls you into believing everything he says, and it's incredibly pleasant once you get him going. So thank you both for joining us today. I know getting, not 1, but 2, but 3 Zen Masters here is incredible, and we thank all of you.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for the super kind introduction.
Thanks, buddy.
I have the data and glitter stickers. If anyone wants one for their laptop, you can, I guess, message me on Twitter or LinkedIn and with your address, and I will mail you a data glitter sticker. They're actually holographic, so they're quite fabulous, because everyone needs a little data glitter in their life. All right, so we got a time crunch, so we're going to focus on really at enhancing our analysis by looking at where. We already had the intro, so we can skip on that slide. When we're looking at our data sets, we very often know a little bit about the who. We might understand, a customer ID, a little bit of demographic information, but generally we only know a little bit of who. We're always trying to analyze the what, right? Either increase the what or decrease the what, or change the what's behavior. So whether or not you purchased something or traveled or took a specific action. And we generally understand a little bit about the when. We can understand if this is a repeated pattern, if this is just a one-time experience. And so we always have a little bit of information about each of these. But as soon as you put a dot on a map and you know where, there is a ton of information out there that people rarely try to take advantage of. And it's just such a great way to be able to enhance your visualizations and better tell the story and gain more insight. And so we wanted to focus on where, just in light of kind of current things going on in the world. And so to give you an idea of my where, I live in San Francisco, California, out kind of towards the beach and a couple doors down from Lowell High School, which you can see with a big red marker. And early on in March, one of the first cases of COVID in San Francisco, actually, I believe it was the third case in San Francisco, was the parent of a student that goes to that Lowell High School, which is just a couple doors down from my house. And suddenly COVID became not about something going on in Wuhan, China that was incredibly tragic and hard to watch, but it became very, very relatable to me. And so I think you can't necessarily really relate to something until it connects to something you know. And as you can tell, my son Max is a freshman at Lowell High School. And I also worked there on Mondays volunteering. So this was very, very near to home. And so what we tend to do as visitors, and it's probably part of a cathartic process, is to try and understand the phenomenon by digging into the data and slicing and dicing it and trying to create something useful to help us. And so that was kind of the start for me of the Tableau COVID Data Hub. And here's an initial mock-up of the starter dashboard that we were going to use based on the Johns Hopkins data. And Alan, I'm going to let you jump in because this was actually the Data Hub originated at Mapbox, and he was the origin.
Yeah, thanks, Anya. Yeah, there are a couple of things about the Data Hub that has kind of been rolled into the history of it. So here at Mapbox, we have a office in China, and they put together a COVID dashboard map with all the analytics right at the start. So, you know, November, December, January, and we kind of knew it was coming. And then I took the data from Johns Hopkins and very quickly built up a workflow in Alteryx to shove it into a Tableau public workbook and into a Google spreadsheet with the help of Tamas Folde. He sponsored a Alteryx server, and that Google spreadsheet got smashed. The day it launched, it almost collapsed with 750 people a minute looking at that spreadsheet. And we also got help from Jonathan Drummey and Anya, and Tableau, the Tableau Foundations just, you know, rolled with it, and it was super cool to see how fast that all came together. Had some real expert help from folks like Kenneth Fields of Esri, and he kind of showed us how to map these things out so it doesn't look cluttered. And we had some great help from Jeremy Blaney and a few others at Tableau. Steve Schwartz was super supportive of getting this done fast and timely, and then it just took a life of its own. Quite an interesting stat for you. When this launched, Tableau as you know, Tableau uses Mapbox maps. On a normal day, Tableau would ask for 4 million map views per day. That was the average. When this thing launched, we hit over 50 million map views just from Tableau, and it just went up and up and up. And so, you know, the Tableau public platform and everybody else who was starting to use this starter dashboard, Lockheed Martin, Capital One, it just went absolutely crazy. So I just, want to thank everybody for their time and their effort in this, because it made Anya's ability to push something up like this starter dashboard that everybody could use easier. But there was so much work behind the scenes from Jonathan, the likes of Jonathan and Tamash and the Tableau Public team, to get this running smoothly and seen by everybody. And then of course Salesforce took it up and really started pushing it into their work.com platform. So yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things we learned while working with the COVID data as well, we wanted nice, sexy dashboard. The ask was really, you're not a subject matter expert with COVID. And so one of our natural reactions is for everyone to want to build something. But we really made this as skeletal and as unjudgmental, focusing on colors that weren't red for death, using logarithmic scales for the size, so you didn't just have massive dots on China. So a lot of thought went into making this purposefully as bland as possible, which sometimes can be very frustrating as a designer. But I did get rewarded because Ashton Kutcher tweeted out my dashboard and loved up on it for a minute and a half on YouTube. So yay, total biggest girly data crush thing ever that happened. But again, so if you want to visit about COVID data, we strongly encourage you to work with a subject matter expert. And we have information and resources in the original starter workbook about using this data responsibly and really understanding things you should and should not do. So that's just there for your information. So if one of the things you notice about Alan talking about all the map hits is where is really one of the most critical things that people are interested in from a personal perspective. I want to understand where it is relative to me and what else is going on. I connected with UNICEF in order to be able to support them trying to answer the question of where all around the world, and looking into understanding restrictions, lockdowns, travel bans, service disruptions, and education across the globe, so people could understand what was going on in their country and potentially countries where their friends and families and loved ones were living, to help provide clarity. So again, working with the subject matter expert, we were able to understand all these different regulations across the world. And then also deep dive in if you wanted to focus on a specific country and get information that had been collected by UNICEF and commented on and curated. So again, if you want to get involved in doing some type of analysis for COVID, I strongly encourage you to work with a nonprofit and a subject matter expert. And again, to the where, here's another project that I supported, which was for the Kaiser Family Foundation. Looking at, again, where well, it's supposed to play, but it's not. Looking at where, and they did a lot of analysis focusing on the demographics of race and ethnicity and how it was impacting people in different states. And again, it's always the focus on where is this happening? So where has become hugely important as we look at COVID. And so to move to the next lower level of granularity, from kind of global to US and down to the neighborhood or even the specific building, we're going to walk you through a way to enhance your analysis with that additional geographic data. And we're going to focus on looking at the distance between households and then people needing to get to a healthcare facility. Because of course, if someone is having a response to COVID, we want to be able to get them to care as quickly as possible. And so we're going to start with a dot on a map, a simple lat-long coordinate. And this happens to be in Maui in Hawaii. And Al, we're going to talk about the buildings.
Yeah, so the buildings in this piece come from an amazing project by Microsoft Research. They put together the GeoJSON, or I guess the shapefiles of every building in the United States. It's open source, so you can download this, you can start analyzing it. It's all on GitHub. It's really easy to use. You simply just, do a search for Microsoft building footprints, GitHub, and it'll give you a page. You just scroll down through it. You get every single state by state, download it, and then start analyzing it. So the way to do, the way we worked for this piece of analysis was using an open source tool called QGIS. And inside QGIS, there's a plugin which you just download from the platform called NNJoin. And what this does is you take the buildings on one side and the hospitals on the other, and it works it all out and finds out which hospital is nearest which building. But in order to make that sensible, we don't want the straight line distance. What we actually want is to work out the route. So in order to do that, we rely on the Tiger line shapefiles, which is actually all of the roads for all of the United States. And then in Alteryx, what we do is start mapping out all of the buildings, all of the roads, all of the hospitals to work out what is the actual road distance and what is the shortest route from the nearest building to the, from the building to the nearest hospital. And then we end up with something like this. So what we're able to do now is to see how the difference between the straight line distance and the actual road distance. Hawaii is really super interesting because you have people that live way up in the hills and they've got super twisty roads. And so it takes way longer to get to the hospital than if you were just, trying to work out the distance in a straight line. And then this really starts to dig in and drive in the difference between urban and rural. Again, Hawaii has got a lot of people living way out in the hills and the mountains, and they have a much harder time getting to their nearest hospital.
And so, Alan, we started working on this, and again, we're like, well, what's the use case? And so we wanted to be able to focus on how do we get to those patients that are at the highest risk because they're over 60 minutes away from a healthcare facility. So if something happens to a patient, you generally try to get them hopefully in 10 minutes, but hopefully within the golden hour, which is 60 minutes. And so I pointed out, well, if you've ever been to Maui, the roads are incredibly windy and twisty, and what might say you only need a drive time of like 4 hours might actually take you all day. And so we wanted to add in this concept of drive time versus the road miles. And so here is a close-up of Maui, just one of the cities, and it's actually showing duration and drive time from every building to the nearest hospital. And then we want to layer in, again, because we know we know where those buildings are located, we want to identify which of the patients are most likely at risk. And to do that, we turn to the American Community Survey data. And there are just tables after tables on anything from health insurance to housing to income to education to languages, age, sex, race, you name it. And so, oh, here we're going to do a little scroll. It just goes on and on and on. And there also had this health insurance information in there. So we focused on a few of the attributes to understand our vulnerable patients. And we looked at, just because we knew the buildings and we knew down to the census block, the characteristics or the general characteristics, we can start to estimate things about the population, and we can focus in on things like patients over a certain age, because we know that they might have more fatal results due to COVID. And then we can add in our filter of that drive time, looking at these patients that are over 60 miles away, and really start to understand who are these vulnerable people that we need to potentially reach out and be proactive in taking care of, or making sure that they have a way to receive care. And so all this dashboard was built just using the American Survey data and the open source data on the building locations and the drive time APIs from Mapbox. But you could also then add in your own patient data. So you could say, I know that there's this patient 60 miles away that's in this age bracket that has these certain health conditions that predispose them to have a more fatal outcome. So again, using just that dot on a map to enhance the information and hopefully provide a better or more effective care. And then Alan built this, that was just for Hawaii. And in the meantime, he has built this for the entire United States. And I have the workbook open, Alan, or you want to just talk about it, or should I go to the workbook?
Just share the workbook, that'd be great, and then just click through. So this is still in early phases work, but what you're seeing on the screen right now is every single building in the United States that is near every single hospital in the United States. So this is taking the Hawaii concept a little stage further. If Anya selects one of these, yeah, if Anya selects one of these hospitals and then zooms in, I think it's into the map.
Yep.
What you're seeing is the isochrones. So the first, it goes out every 6 minutes. Zoom right in, Anya. That's the.
Trying to get to the Mayo Clinic.
Yeah.
Tableau's not letting me zoom so well.
That's okay.
All right, there we go.
There you go.
Down to the buildings.
Yeah. So we have every six minutes duration, we have an isochrone. So it goes 6 minutes, 12 minutes, 18 minutes, 24 minutes, 30 minutes, right out to 60 minutes. And one of the super interesting patterns here is actually in the islands. So if you reset the map, Anya, and maybe scoot over to Puerto Rico. Nice. So Puerto Rico is really interesting because you see there's a black hole in the middle. And that means that any building inside those black holes is more than 60 minutes away. And I find that like tremendously insightful. One of the things that we'll be able to do with this data is you'll be able to click on your building, like your address, and you'll be able to get the route and the distance and duration to your nearest hospital. It's not available yet in Tableau because it's, you know, you need some heavy duty JavaScript API kind of stuff to get that done. But the opportunity is there. And the other thing is just the size of the data that is being shown here. This is 52 gigabytes of raw GeoJSON that we're able to just scoot around at, you know, click on any of the hospitals in the charts and you'll get the.
We only got 4 minutes left.
Yeah, okay.
So, all right.
Done.
We want to go back and even a lower level of granularity and make it personable about me and my new normal. So this is me and my kids at each other's throats by like 10 o'clock while I'm trying to work. This is 10 a.m. every day. And so we want to work to the new normal. As Alan mentioned, we've been doing a lot of work with Salesforce. I found this really funny. My girlfriend saw this on Facebook and I'm like, oh, look, I'm next to poop and cancer. That's awesome. But so we are working to bring that Tableau data into Salesforce, and they have an app that they're working that does things like contact tracing and shows employee health attestation and scanning, as well as looking at building occupancy and shift management to really try and, when we do go back to normal, make sure that it's safe. And so just some of the early prototypes of some of the dashboards we were looking at is to understand where your employees are and almost create like a sales funnel or a checklist of different steps that you would need to go through. So you have all your employees, and then you might have those that are potentially have been exposed and are contact trace risk. You have those that have a health certificate saying that they're well. And then of those that the health certificate after they do their daily temperature check, and then maybe you'll weed out those that are of high risk category, and then understanding, well, how many people do you need to actually function and have your office open versus how many are available. Or just another example of a workbook, and I think I have this one open. just trying to understand the number of offices that you have in San Francisco, and then I can drill in and I can see, well, is the curve flattening or is the curve rising? And then I can see some information by organization of the number of employees that are available and whether or not that meets a target of being able to function and operate. So that's just some examples. And then a couple more, just because I know we're going over on our time. Is looking at this contact tracing. And so in this instance, we've brought in a building floor plan into, georeferenced it and loaded it into Mapbox. So this is actually Grand Central Station in the background. And using Wi-Fi data, you could understand, well, if this employee was revealed later that they were exposed to COVID, we could then go and see all the other people that came within a buffered radius. So this is using the Tableau's buffer and just doing an intersection to see everyone that they came in contact with, potentially the length of time of exposure and things like that. So we could really understand who else might have been put at risk. And then another example, and this one is actually using scanners from a company called Bastille. They were really about security and network security and things like airport security, but now they've pivoted to using their technology where they install sensors in the office that detect people's movements and record it. So you can understand the time of day when people are coming in. You could understand, if you click on an employee, all the locations that they've been and the times of day that they've been in those locations throughout the office. And you can also understand if any of these are threats that are at risk. I'm sorry, I had to obfuscate all of the data, but understanding what the potential risk factor is, and then understand the shifts and the time schedules of employees that were there during the same time, because you really want to mitigate the length of exposure and also the area or the zones within the buildings where people were together. So again, these are just some examples of, again, we're using that lat-long location to be able to really create a safe workplace for when people go back and do things like arrange shifts. Some of the other things that we have been doing with this data is looking at zones of traffic. So understand where there are people constantly clustering, so we can time entry and exit to the building, or say to the kitchenette. People that aren't using sensors or the Wi-Fi data because of privacy concerns have also looked into options of using QR codes that people badge in and out when they go to different sections of the building. I mean, you can tie that to things like cleaning schedules. So there was a meeting in an office, you can see how many people entered into that meeting room. And if it reaches a certain capacity, send an alert that there's too many folks in the room. And then once people have left the room and it's recorded as empty, it then sends a signal or notification to a cleaning crew to come in and make it safe for the next team. So again, this is all using where and going from a really, really high level down to this, minute level of where you were inside your office. Again, and this is all made possible just by putting that dot on a map. And so now we hope you are inspired and motivated to focus a little bit more on the where in some of your dashboards and try to enhance your analysis with that information. And so I know we are over time now, so thank you. We had planned to do a data viz meditation, but we ran out of time. But maybe at the end of the session, if people want to stick around, we can do a little data viz meditation to focus on relieving stress and finding joy. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll take any questions in chat.
Thank you.
Tanya,
Thank you,
Alan, that was incredible. You should see the chat and some of the comments in there. So thank you so much for joining us. Truly, truly appreciated that we can have you both here.
Thank you so much.
Chris, I think you're on.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, so we're going to turn the ball back over to Kevin. Sorry for the technical difficulties, Kevin. I hope you're ready to rock and roll here. All right. Audio.
Hey, Anya, I think you could probably do the meditation right now.
Hey.
Yeah, let's do the meditation.
All right, sorry about that. You got me now.
Oh, there we go. All right.
All right, sorry about that. Having all kinds of troubles here. I'm going to get through this thing, though. I promise you. Can't go downhill from here, right? I can only go uphill or something like that. I can't remember how to say that. So first of all, when I saw the lineup, I was like, oh, perfect. I don't have to follow these heavy hitters. And here I am. I have to follow them. So shame on me for losing my audio there. I think I was giving some praise on Anya, although she's just kind of giving herself all the praise she needs. But just to go back to where I was, I did meet Anya way back in 2013, I think it was, in Washington, D.C. at TC13. I think we met again at Tapestry. My wife later went on to wear Anya's maternity clothing line. Yes, she had a maternity clothing line. You're going to have to buy her a Manhattan to hear that story. And then I went on to work for Tableau, and Anya went on to change the world, which is good because I got daughters and they need a better world. So please keep doing all you're doing. It's amazing. Alan, you as well. And Luke, I'm just meeting you today. So thank you all for that. A little bit about me. My name is Kevin Taylor. If you haven't met me yet, you can call me KT. I am a principal solutions engineer with Tableau based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. More specifically, I'm actually out of Fuquay Varina, but I'm not always talking to people from North Carolina, so nobody knows what that is. But I got the RDU tug here, so they know where Fuquay is. Also excited to be here with the Twin Cities, tug too. So excited there. A little bit about me. I've been with Tableau 4.5 years, but I've been in the Tableau community many more years than that. Probably about 10 years in total. I was at that very awkward, very first Tableau user group in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was actually in Chapel Hill. That was probably the problem. But we were in a coffee shop. You can buy me a beer. I'll tell you that story. I'm a cheap date. But I've been in this space 21 years. That's all I know. Actually been in this space longer than I haven't in my life, which is interesting. But that's all great and dandy, but does it really qualify me to give you relationship advice? So let me share some pictures on what qualifies me with relationship advice, starting with my token family picture that I put in every one of my presentations. These are my best relationships, my beautiful wife, my twin daughters, Casey and Kennedy, my twin Aussie pups as well. Interesting story. We were talking about this earlier. The one on the right there is deaf and half blind. My other Aussie has both of those to a degree. So watching that relationship's been amazing. You're a bunch of analysts. You're doing the math on the ratio right now. It's 5-to-1 there, ladies to guy. I like that. I'm a ladies man. But that ratio gets worse. I've got 12 chickens in my backyard, 12 hens, 1 rooster. And this shot was taken back in April before 2020.2 came out, before we had data relationships. And I struggled to figure out how do I get my old hens together with my young chickens. Luckily, we released 20.2, and I was able to combine those. All jokes aside, though, really my relationships go beyond my home. They spread out and beyond the Tableau community. These are my peeps out on the right. COVID's got me missing them like crazy. I get to coordinate a special needs ministry at my church on weekends when COVID's not around. These relationships are platinum. So I just wanted to have a little bit of fun while I introduce myself and play on that word relationships. But what am I going to talk to you for about the next 15 minutes or so? First off, hopefully you didn't really think I was going to come give you relationship advice on those sticky and messy interpersonal relationships, right? I've got my Tableau doctor shirt on, but it does not qualify me to give you advice on that. What it does hopefully qualify me to talk about, though, is that game-changing feature that we just released last month in 2020.2. We calling it data relationships. If you came to conference, you probably heard it referred to as noodles or maybe the object model. So I'm going to touch really briefly on why I believe these relationships are going to be such great value to you and your organizations. I'm going to touch on some of the key ingredients, if you will, to get you acclimated with the new UX and the new experience. If you're an old dog like me, this is a new trick. And yes, change can be uncomfortable, especially at the front side, but at the back side of that, it can be beautiful. And this is no exception. This is a game changer. Can we continue to do it the old way with joins and physical joins? Yeah, we could do that. I'll show you how to double click to get into that layer. But that's really not a wise approach, right? To do things the way we've always done it, that's going to keep us doing it the way we always done it. We're not going to move forward. Finally, I'm going to wrap up with a demo. That's my favorite part. I get to have some fun. I get to show you relationships on the fly while I educate you on the legend who is Neil Diamond. If you do not know who Neil Diamond is, I just want to congratulate you on your youth. Or maybe you've only heard of him in a butt of a joke. But Neil Diamond is a legend in the music industry. I'm going to try to show you why. Now, finally, just a quick note here. I am going to be doing a fun demo. My intent is to show you the ease of relationships, some of the new UI changes. But no, it's not just a lower barrier of entry, right? Relationships is going to allow you to do more complex modeling and allow you to create models that are more flexible for analysis. So I'm just exposing the tip of the iceberg today. I'm going to leave you with some pretty good Tableau resources to help you take the next steps in your relationships. And I do encourage you to seek out more relationship advice from the Tableau community. So let's dive in here and talk about this new feature. First of all, really high level here, relationships are simply a flexible way for you to combine data from multiple data sources. You just grab the tables, you tell Tableau, here's the fields they match on. You don't worry about joining it at that point. You're just saying, how do they relate? And then Tableau is going to automatically generate joins when you visualize it. So I'll show you some slides here that help make sense of that. But basically, you're going to postpone those joins to the time that you actually ask your questions. In other words, you're going to get the context of your analysis first. This is going to do many things. First of which is it's going to preserve the native level of detail in your data, and then it's also going to make it so that it's only going to create tables that are necessary to answer your questions. So I'll say this more than once: when you combine tables with relationships, you are creating a very custom, flexible data source that can typically be used to answer way more questions than just a standard one-off join, all in a single data source. Another way to describe this, and I'm going to turn off that motion there on the right in a second, is that we're creating now a logical table layer to make it easier to analyze data across multiple tables, but also across multiple or different levels of detail, different levels of granularity. For example, users could have a single table with, say, transaction level detail, and then a table with just customer, very high level detail, without having to flatten those into a denormalized table the way we've always done it. And I'm going to illustrate that here with a slide. But before I do that, know that you can do this. You don't have to learn any kind of advanced database concepts. You don't have to write custom SQL code. You don't need to pre-aggregate your data. And thanks to LOD-aware relationships, you don't have to think about those left joins or the right joins or the inner joins, or do I want all my table from this data or all my data from this table, or do I want to make sure I keep all my data from that table, right? It's the unknowns that doesn't really work for. The questions are going to change. So wouldn't it be better if we brought in all the data and then let Tableau figure out which logical tables are needed and what type of join is needed to render the viz for the question you're asking, thanks to LOD-aware analysis and context-aware queries. And if you are storing your data in common data warehouse schemas like a star or a snowflake, relationships can actually detect cardinality and referential integrity if it's designed right, saving you even more steps. So I'll show you what I'm talking about there in the demo. So at a really high level, historically, if you think about how we join, we're depicting on the left here an inner join, and we define the join. We've got our two tables, and what does Tableau do? It runs the join right away, and it creates one giant table with all the outputs. You get that denormalized table. But with relationships, that gets paused, that gets postponed. All we're going to do in the data creation stage is say, here's two tables, here's how they relate. Don't join them yet. You have no idea what I'm asking. We're going to wait until the analysis. So let me walk through that step by step. If we join two tables, that is going to result in a third table. You're seeing that on the right here, hopefully. This is not specific to a relationship. This is fundamental. When joins are executed up front in data preparation, however, all of your subsequent analysis happens on that new table, the one at the bottom. So the data in that new table, it doesn't have a memory, right? So it forgets, how did it get there? You might lose some really important information like the level of the detail of those original tables. Yet with relationships, we're going to combine and analyze these tables simultaneously, generating exactly the data that we need for the analysis we want to do on the fly. Now, this is going to have numerous benefits, starting with level of detail awareness. Because relationships do preserve the source tables in their original structure, measures can automatically aggregate to their native level of detail. Beyond that, since unmatched values are handled individually per viz, a single data source can simultaneously support questions from all of your join types, whether that's an inner join, whether that's a left join, a right join, or a full outer join. And then finally here, Tableau only pulls data from the tables that are relevant for your visualization. So if you've got 25 tables in there, but you're asking a question and the data just comes from one, Tableau's not going to join all those tables together, right? That's a lot more performant. With this, users can add more tables to their data sources without having to worry about query time impacts. So again, when we combine table using relationships, we're getting a custom, flexible data source to answer way more questions, all in a single data source. What is this going to yield for you and your companies? First of all, less upfront data prep. Previously, when you went to combine tables, you had to pre-aggregate that data to a single level of detail, either in custom SQL or database views, maybe in Tableau prep, or you had to write some LOD calcs. But now when we analyze multiple tables, Tableau is going to automatically combine those relevant tables at the right level of detail when you ask those questions, leading some of our customers to call that ETL on the fly. I don't know who originated it, but I like it. Secondly here, with the aggregated data before the pre-aggregated data, we could lose data. If you do an inner join, right, anything that doesn't match is now gone from that output or that denormalized data. So now with relationships, a data source is going to preserve all of that level of detail, enabling us to ask more unanticipated questions, serving more use cases with one data source. With that, of course, that means fewer data sources, hopefully, and less maintenance. Finally, and certainly not last, this can result in a greater trust in the results. What I mean by that, IT is pretty hesitant to allow the business users to start combining data. Why? Joins are tricky, they're error prone, right? You can unintentionally filter out data, whereas relationships, we're going to keep and preserve all those measures. Now, important measures like maybe money, maybe debts, revenues, they're not going to go missing just because we didn't have, say, a customer ID associated with a transaction. So another challenge, the last one I want to mention here, is that with data preparation, you have to pay really close attention to the order of joins, the aggregations, but Tableau is going to handle that automatically. Does this mean we'll never, ever do a physical join again in Tableau? Absolutely not. When I said earlier, I don't think we should just jump right to the physical. There's going to be times where we need to. And I'm just going to show you what the model looks like here. It's kind of like a matrix view. You've got the logical layer up top. I'm going to show you that. Most of the tables in the demo today are going to be like logical table B here, where they have one underlying physical table. But we do have those scenarios where we need to do some work up front, do some elbow grease, some heavy lifting. Maybe we want to union the data. Maybe we've got some inequality joins that we want to put in here. So we have that ability. I will show you that. Unions, there's a shortcut in the logical layer, but it does happen at the physical layer. Join calculations and inequality relationships. Right now, that's just a shortcoming of the product. 20.20.3 beta launched yesterday. And I believe both of these are in there. I did not check this morning. They were supposed to be, but we're supposed to be able to do these types of like this where this is not equal to that, or join calculations. Maybe I want to join full name to first name and last name, so I got to concatenate those. So you see some of the limitations to know that we are going to use these at times. There will be times where it is an advantage. That's going to help with your complex models. So with that, I get to go to the fun part, which is the demo. I'm going to try to keep it under my 25 minutes here, but I'm going to show you how relationships can bring together the likes of these legends, Neil Diamond, Gladys Knight, Mary J. Blige, and Andrea Bocelli. So some of the greatest singer-songwriters ever. And to do that, let me open up, see if I can get to this. Let me open up my desktop here, bring it onto the screen, and I am going to connect to my data. Here, I'm going to do this really simple. I mean, I am using two tables. It doesn't get more simple than that. I've got my Microsoft Excel, Neil data, and I've got two data sets in here. I wish Kyle Beal was here. He always did that good stuff with billboards. But the Billboard Top 100 has got every single artist, the song, and the week, and what the ranking was, all the way back to 1958. Whereas my RIAA is the Record Institute of Americas, and it looks at the very high level of artists, how many gold, platinum, multi-platinum, and diamond. And if we were in an interactive setting, I'd ask you right now, how many platinum albums do you think Neil Diamond has? And you'd probably tell me some crazy number like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, and you're not close, right? As I come in here at Neil Diamond, somebody probably know this. There's some Sweet Caroline people out there somewhere, but the answer is 21 platinum records, and I triple, double, quadruple checked this, and that's legit. He's got 21. That is a lot, folks. If I take my artist and throw it on here, and we'll just sort this and swap it, I can see now that Neil Diamond is number 8 of all musicians all time for platinum albums, behind the likes of Elvis Presley, the Beatles, Barbra Streisand, a couple country music singers there as well. 21, to put that into context, is the same number as Michael Jackson and Taylor Swift combined, or Metallica and Taylor Swift, or Freebird down here, Skinner and Taylor. I don't know why I keep saying Taylor Swift. She's got 8. That's the only one I knew how to add in there. But that should tell you a little bit about Neil Diamond. Now, I haven't used a relationship yet, so you're probably thinking, what the heck is he just wants to tell me about Neil Diamond. But if I come back here now, rather than doing a relationship, I want to show you I can do a physical join simply by double-clicking on my logical table. It brings me down to the physical layer here. And now I can say, all right, let me bring in my top 100. I'll create my join just like the old way, the good old way. I've got my artist. I want to connect that to performer. And then I got to decide, do I want an inner or left or right? Here I've chose inner. And you can see Tableau's already gone ahead, made that join, and brought it all together. That was the right side of that slide, if you remember the one I'm talking about. The problem with this, though, if I come back here, as you see it right away, Neil Diamond all of a sudden has 11,613 platinum records, and we know that's not right. And if we click on the underlying data here and just go look at the full data, you're going to see right away what's going on is I've got, for each week that he had a song in the top Billboard Top 100, I'm adding 21 more platinum albums. Boom, 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 boom. Multiply that, 11,613. And it actually changed the order up here, right? Elton John lit up the chart because he had more hits in the Billboard 100 than, say, the Beatles, which is interesting. Lots of interesting stuff in this data. But I want to ask more questions now, and I want to get that right. So let me go back to my data source here. Let's get rid of this physical join, close out of my physical. And there would have been a note here to tell me there's 2 tables. But I want to come in here now, and I just want to relate. So I get my noodle, and I'm going to tell it artist and performer again. And I could just walk away at this point, and it's good. I don't have to tell it inner join, left join. Remember, Tableau's going to figure that out for me later. But I can add performance options. If I know the cardinality, meaning if I know it's a many to one, I can put that in here. Referential integrity. Do I know every field exists in both sides that I'm joining on? If so, I can change that to all, and that's going to be great for your query performance. For here, I'm just going to leave it the same, though, and I'm going to hop back over to sheet 1. And if I come in here now, just like magic, Tableau has gone ahead and fixed my number without having to create an average, a min, or a max, without having to do an LOD, without having to rejoin the data. I'm just relating it, and Tableau is smart enough to get it right. That's all fine and dandy, but now I want to ask questions that I could not ask if I had done an inner join, like do I have any artists that had a lot of platinum records but never had any hits? Like, does that ever happen? I don't know. Let's go explore. So I can duplicate this sheet. And what I want to do now is bring in my weeks on chart, stick to the side. I'll sort it top to bottom, and I'll go ahead and get rid of, I know that I don't need this null in here. I'll sort my platinums now top to bottom, and let's create a calculation here. And I'm just going to do it from blank. I can type them faster, I feel. Let's call this nulls, and I want to do an is null on, let's see here, on weeks or week on chart, so that third measure. And what that does, first of all, a couple things I didn't point out yet. I wanted to wait till this point. Notice the data is separated differently now in a in the desktop. I've got it by table and then by dimensions and measures. And notice that my calculations showed up under that one table, and that's because it only relates to that one table. If I go back to my data source, I didn't show this either. You know, I'm not pulling my data together at this point. Again, we're waiting until we ask a question to do that join. So you see that the other big difference here is you don't have a global number of records. Instead, we have a count associated with each table. So that might be something that's going to be new to you. But I can take those nulls now, drop it on color here. What did I do here? Did I swap it? I did it on platinums. Oh, what did I do? Null is null. I want weeks on charts. That is interesting. I took the null. Might have done something wrong here. Oh, that's what I did on color. There we go, much better. And the first thing I noticed here is, okay, Reba McEntire, did she have any hits? Absolutely, she had a lot of hits. This is dirty data, and that's the first thing I know is by doing this relationship, I can start to profile my data and clean it up. This was either Reba or Reba McEntire without this space. But if I scroll down, here's another one, Isley Brothers, it's the Isley Brothers in this data set. But Andrea Bocelli here is a very interesting phenomenon. Andrea Bocelli is one of my favorite artists. Speaking of being blind, he had glaucoma at 5 months and then lost his sight at 12 years old as part of a football accident, which was interesting to me. But Andrea Bocelli is an Italian-born, more of an opera singer. His music is just it's amazing. You will listen to an entire album without ever caring what the song is. Heck, you might not even know the words because half of it's in Italian and Spanish. But I did find the reason you saw Mary J. Blige on my slide, he did have one collaboration hit. I think it was part of a charity event where he and Mary J. Blige sang Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel. It is spine-tingling. So check that out. But there are artists here with 10 platinum albums without a single hit on the Billboard. What if I want to ask that question the other way around? Who had big hits and never had a platinum album? I'll duplicate this once more. I'll take this filter out and let's sort this. Actually, before I sort, it's very important where the dimension comes. I want to ask this question from the performers or from the Billboard side. So I need to bring performer, and that's where the level of detail comes in. I can exclude this null here. I can sort this again, top to bottom. Here, I'm going to go to my nulls calculation, and I could just wipe this out, but I want to show you that if I use dimensions or measures for multiple tables, it's going to show up somewhere else. So I'm going to say if it's platinum now, make that orange as well. My null just moved down here, out of a table, down to my global spot because it hits multiple tables. I drag that into color. Actually, it's already in color, so perfect. Scroll down, I find dirty data. If you want to know how old I am, I went to this data set and I found that on my birthday, Hall & Oates had Rich Girl was the #1 song on the Billboard Top 100. Hopefully I put that song in your head. But if I scroll down here, this one's dirty data, the Pointer Sisters. There's 3 ladies down here, Brenda Lee, Connie Francis, and the great Gladys Knight and the Pips. And if you're from around Raleigh, you may have heard of 42nd Street Oyster Bar. I started cleaning that place when I was like 12 years old, and I learned how to hack the jukebox. And Gladys Knight was a mainstay. And I grew up on Gladys and the Pips and songs like Midnight in Georgia, and I was just astonished to figure out she's 2,800 weeks on the top Billboard 100 without ever going beyond a gold album. So really interesting data, if you ask me. Questions I could not answer in the old way. And that really brings me kind of to my conclusion here. There is a lot going on with relationships, the flexibility, the things there. I barely touched the tip of the iceberg. Encourage you to go out, do our on-demand tutorial to get started. Check out the blogs. There's a part 2 and 3 of that first one you see there. I think Bethany Lyons did them. She's amazing. If she did, I'll give credit to the right person. There's some more stuff there on our documentation, but I encourage you to, I know some of our partners and some of the folks and masters have started presenting on this and speaking about relationships, but please check that out. And with that, I'm done. I'm going to drop the mic, say thank you very much. I honor Chris for giving me this gift, but thank you so much for the time, and I will hang around afterwards for the Q&A.
Yeah, that's fantastic stuff, Kevin, as always. I mean, I must have seen you present a dozen times now, from your participation in the RDU Tug to TC, and how many times I've seen you internal at Red Hat. I mean, whether you're showing off the beyond marks, beyond lines and bars, or doing the really technical stuff, really fantastic, so thank you. So I am coming to you from my garage. I pointed out for 2 reasons. One, I'm Paul McHale. I'm at Red Hat. People find it interesting that I'm out in my garage, so we'll acknowledge it. But really, I bring it up because we were going to be at Red Hat tonight, and it's kind of disappointing to not be at Red Hat for me. But what it's allowed us to do with these virtual things like this is just fantastic, and you see it in the lineup. We got a few Red Hatters on today. I've been scrolling through the list. Thank you guys for coming. We had our Tug Tuesday morning, so you guys are sticking in there with Tableau, and I love it. I'm here to introduce Luke Stanky, and I want to first say he was going to be in Raleigh tonight, so he was coming with us either way. In fact, he might be disappointed he's not in the Red Hat Tower. Who wouldn't want to visit Red Hat's HQ? But we'll hopefully get you to Raleigh one day, Luke. I've met Luke a handful of times. We got to know each other briefly at conference. He's approachable, he's knowledgeable, he's a teacher at heart, and he emulates the Tableau community. And I talk about the Tableau community all the time at Red Hat, so some of you are just used to hearing this over and over again. But there's no global community like it, centered around technology or BI solutions. It's a fantastic place to learn. And I've learned so much of what I had from this community. And also from Luke, whether he realizes it or not. He just thinks I say it every time I see him. But Luke's a partner at Tessellation. It's an analytics consultancy. But he's been developing high-end, scalable data science and data visualization solutions for more than a decade. He leads Workout Wednesday. I point Red Hatters to it all the time. Weekly challenge where participants test and grow their technical and design skills in Tableau. He is a teacher at heart, like I mentioned a moment ago, and I don't know where the community would be at without people like Luke. He's a social ambassador for Tableau. And he shares his knowledge. You got to check out his YouTube videos, Data Coach YouTube, 6-minute videos. We're called Tableau 360 and long form discussions called How to Tableau. So with that, I'm going to get out of the way and let Luke take it from here.
Oh, thanks for the great introduction. Yeah, I was supposed to be there in Raleigh. I lived in Charlotte for 3 years and 4 summers, and I didn't enjoy the heat, so I moved back to Minnesota. But I had some of my best friends lived up in Roanoke, so I used to just drive up through the Triangle all the time to get up there. But often, traffic, the Triangle traffic's not great, so I would actually just scoot around in Henderson up and around. But I've been through Raleigh so many times, and so I wouldn't say it's home by any means, but it's definitely a place I'm very familiar with growing up in my young adult years, that's for certain. And I guess I'm supposed to, again, all this was, usually I have to sort of do an intro a little bit, but I've been using Tableau since 2013 officially. Before that, though, I actually, like in 2009 or 2010, we were trying to select a BI tool for the University of Minnesota, and I was the person who got to review the tools, and I came across the very early release of Tableau, and I said, no way, this tool is not good enough. So it took a few more years before it was really an above average tool, and then all of a sudden I've been using it ever since. So I'm now a 2-time Tableau Zen Master, which means I really just geek out on Tableau all the time. Nothing to the extremes of geekery of both Anya and Alan, who are on a completely another level with some of the stuff that they're doing. But I got some visuals here that I just wanted to share. The one on the top left is actually my first Tableau public visualization. We did it for, we were looking at SAT scores or ACT scores, I believe, and we were comparing different groups of students, and just wanted to share that out. And it was actually embedded inside of a series of blog posts. So that was like my first foray into sharing on Tableau Public. And then I've done some like more interesting stuff where and this is all in Tableau Public, where you can use, I used to scrape the ticket prices from StubHub to try to figure out where was the best value and when was the best value, and plotted that in the Twins Stadium. And then I did some more fancy stuff with Harry Potter, but then I was told my work is not totally approachable. So I started focusing more on some more practical things. So I've been doing some things with tables for the last few months. And if I ever find time to blog again, I will do that. And yep, I co-lead a analytics consulting firm and a training platform where we train on Tableau, Alteryx, Power BI, and a number of other stuff too, but just those to start. I'm based in Minneapolis, and yep, we have clients worldwide and in Pittsburgh, where I originally used this. But here's the website of Tessellation. Anyway, I also, outside of work, I also run a full-time daycare for one person, one young child, for the last now like 16 weeks. So it's been a bit of stress. Oh, and I have some pictures of her because she's She's fun and enjoyable. And of course, because I'm doing all these things, I figured I got to show how I'm human a little bit. And this is exactly she's cheesing out, and then she's going, believe it or not, it's a hot day in this bottom left picture. And then the top left, there's some houses by some lakes, and she just decided to climb a hill by a really nice house, and then she claimed it was my house. So she has got great taste in things already, just like her mother, and her being a dinosaur 2 times over. So she loves dinosaurs and trucks, which all great girls do love those things. But I'm here to talk about performant workbooks, which is both simultaneously very interesting because it all applies to all of us, and also extremely dry because we're talking about performance. So I'm going to do my best to talk about how to build performant workbooks. A lot of the tips that I'm going to get are from Tableau's white paper, but also really from a lot of experience, again, using the product for now 7 years. Sort of have a sense of what works and what doesn't. And some of the tips, even in the white paper, are incorrect depending on what data sources you might be live connected to. But building a performance workbook is a lot like a Jenga puzzle. You don't know it as you're writing a poor calculation or rendering a viz, but you're kind of popping different pieces out of your performant workbook. And then eventually like all falls apart and doesn't work. And you're like, how do I make it work again? And that's kind of where we're going to focus a lot of the time. And why do we do this? We want to make faster decisions. We want better user experience so that they don't have to sit and wait 30 seconds or a minute for a dashboard. They have to just wait a few seconds. And when you have shorter time, it's better adoption. And of course, if you're collaborating with others on building that product, it's a lot easier to not wait for things to load when you're doing that. And of course, why does this all matter? We all just really hate waiting for things. We live in a very get it to me quick and fast society, and that's we hate waiting. So that's why it matters. But how does a server actually does a workbook degrade? Well, there's a lot of factors that go in, and sort of working from the highest level to the most granular piece of information. First, it depends on your server hardware. For many of you, that really doesn't matter because you can't control that. For some of you, you're server admins, so it's on the server configuration. But then it starts to become more of the developers on the developer and how they're using their data sources, whether it's an extract, etc. We'll get into that. The queries that they're putting on their data source. What you don't know as you work with a data source, you are creating a query behind the scenes, and that query can affect the performance, and it's just having you be aware of what that might look like. It also matters in the complexity of the calculations that you're writing, which I'm going to try to get into in this very limited time set that we have. And then the volume, I will just call it the volume and types of filters, because they secretly play more of a role than you would ever think. That you're just thinking, oh, I'm going to add 10, 12, 18 filters, and it makes a huge difference. And then finally, the marks you actually render on your view, so the actual values that are going to show up, whether it's in a text form or it's rendered as in a scatter plot, the actual marks that Tableau creates. Since we're short on time, I got a lot of screenshots to save that time. Where to begin? Always start with performance recording. If you haven't used performance recording, you just go to Help, Settings, and Performance, and then start performance recording. And that's going to record your actions. And then you can sort of play around on your dashboard and see what's happening. And then when you stop performance recording following the exact same process, you get an output of what might be caused, essentially just breaking down what happened and when it happened behind the scenes. And what you're able to do with the summary workbook is start to understand what exact piece is causing degradation in your workbook. Is it a calculation? Is it render? You sort of get a whole bunch of information here. And while I could spend hours walking through this, I'm not going to focus there because no one really wants to just review the logs. But again, another thing you can do besides doing performance recording is actually checking your logs, which you can get to by going to your My Tableau repository, and then now I forget where it is, logs, and then actually opening up your log file and reading through that. Really enthralling stuff. It records pretty much every action you do in Tableau. And if something breaks, you can just open up a log and start reading through it. It's what Tableau does when you send in a ticket. They're like, send me the log, and you could do the same thing to start breaking it down. But again, no one really wants to do that. They want to know how to fix things. So server. Well, for servers, admins have a lot of tuning options that they can cover, but what can you do? Number one, you can help with the caching of your dashboards, and you can do that by not selecting automatic. When you select automatic on your dashboard, it has to render on server every single time, because every single time you, not necessarily every time, but everybody sort of has a unique screen size. And so every time there's a different screen size, we're looking at a different render and cache setting. So you're really, it might fit your screen nicely, but you're not really saving load time for your friends. So it's more of being friendly. And while you're at it, another really useful tip is to just get rid of all the content you're not using. Your admin might have settings for that, but just delete all the extra stuff you're not using. It helps on the server eventually. If you're just clogging it up with content, it can make a big difference. So the data source itself, I know this for some of you it might not be new, but do you use live or extract? Well, ultimately it depends on the infrastructure. If you have a really high performing live connection, it might actually be faster than extractor, but 99% of the time, 95% of the time, the better option is to use an extract. And that might be like some very simple advice, but I've worked with organizations that are very large that still to this day in 2020 believe that that extracts were not the fastest way to do things, and even despite having some very slow live connections, and we've changed opinions, but almost always an extract is better. Also, to this point of minimizing your queries to the data, I brought that up earlier. Just remember that every viz that you create, every sheet that you create that goes on a dashboard or sits alone, it's performing at least one query to the data source, whether it's an extract or live, but there are some shortcuts that can happen. And so my point being here is if you have 50 sheets that you're putting on a view and not a lot of commonalities between them, you're going to have a lot of queries that are occurring, and you're going to try to avoid, it's going to slow things down eventually when it's trying to render. So just ask yourself as you're doing this, how many sheets do you have? What does actually your audience need from the dashboard, from the data product? And is that information all unique, or is there a way that you can consolidate some of that information, maybe put it in a secondary or third level dashboard view for your users? When it comes to the data source, again, only use the data that's needed. And I have a really great example for that in a screenshot here, is like clean up the detail and the filters, and also again make an extract. So if you have everybody makes tables. Let's not pretend that Tableau isn't a table making tool, because everybody does it. If you have something that looks like this, and I've just kind of created what I try to do with the Superstore data is make the slowest, I could make it slower, but make a very slow loading table. And what I have on here are a lot of extra marks. If you take a look at the marks card, I've just got some attribute for city, state, postal code, some additional information just for total manufacturers and max ship date. And by the way, this table is just individual orders. So you can see like an order ID and the customer and what they bought and some metrics around it. But that tooltip has a lot of, personally, I think probably not useful information in the tooltip. So in general, I try to pull as much out of the tooltip so I don't have to render that extra information and process that additional information. And then also on my filters, I've got 7 or 8 filters here. And maybe I can knock that down to 3 somehow and work with my end users, my audience, to narrow that down. That's going to speed up the performance of this dashboard. I'm also going to bring this up later, at least I think I am, but I'm using the attribute function here, and that is actually a slow way to do things, and there's a slightly faster way to do this. Again, finally, make an extract. Don't be afraid to use one. And I'm just, trying to watch the time. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit here. So like there's things that we can do around custom query. Like the best thing you can do, by the way, when you're loading in a data source is to work with the actual table itself and not write custom SQL. That was brought up at essentially is what Kevin was alluding to earlier when he was like using the old method one of those things that you can do is a custom call, and you do your own order by and group by, and that's generally a little bit slower already. And by using the new model, we sort of solve that problem. So in general, like even whether it's the old model or new model, just load in the individual tables and try to avoid the custom SQL itself. And if you've got data that somehow are still too large, you can always create a summary table of that data. And that does happen from time to time. Tableau can support a lot of data. I've personally worked with over 500 million records in a single sheet. So I know that it is possible to roll up data and have the visualizations created the way that you want to. It's just a matter of how you format and how you build the actual underlying visualization. All right, I'm watching my daughter get here. So, you know, that means it's almost 5 o'clock and it's about to get loud and fun because that's where we live today. And here's the calculations. I want to go back into actual Tableau and talk about how these things work. There's native functionalities within Tableau that we can use over calculations. And the first thing I often think of is me sharing the correct screen. Zoom share, new share, there we go. Let's load this one up. So back into Tableau, the first one I think about is the use of groups. I almost rarely use groups, but they actually are very, very, very useful. Often I see folks try to create custom calculations. So here's one of those calculations that that we kind of see where it's like, oh, let's search for a product or a manufacturer name, and then we'll load that up from the product name and sort of create these groups. And that's what I'm doing here on this quick sheet here is I'm just loading up the manufacturer names. The better way to do that is using Tableau's built-in functionality of groupings and actually just manually grouping those together. It's gonna, you're not really saving that much time in the calculation. I know that's a sort of a simple one, but another is bins. And I used to be like a simple, just a naysayer of bins in general. I was like, I can do this with calculations. And there's a couple different ways we can do this with calculations. We could like write a very long if statement to create those bins for us. And then from those bins, we could use an LOD to sort of group things together. And then we would eventually just place that on the visualization and build the bins. Or the better way is just to use the bin functionality in Tableau. Another great one that I personally didn't think about as I'm doing this is how first slow dates are. Working with dates is like the lowest form of, the slowest form of working with dates. And it's in part because dates take on many different forms and Tableau allows for a lot of flexibility with dates. However, that flexibility does affect performance. If you think about it, you drag from Superstore like order date out onto columns, and it immediately has the ability, some flexibility of choosing whatever date part you want from it, and or date value. And it also has a drill in hierarchical function. Well, that's a lot of weight that we're putting on Tableau secretly behind the scenes when we're trying to render out our view. Instead, the better option is to go in and actually create custom dates. And when we use the custom date functionality, we're just specifying a specific date part, and the underlying calculation that Tableau is using will just sort of bring to that, just that one level. I should have picked year here, but you can sort of see if I just go change this to discrete, we'll have our, again, just more performant in this setup. And then finally, the last one I want to show in this sort of this segment of calculations is one that I'm personally guilty of a number of times, and I know lots of people are, is that I've got a parameter over here where I can change from profit ratio, which is a percentage, to sales, which is a dollar amount. And I'm changing my labels dynamically here. And what I want to do is show you that calculation that's really slow, is that I'm sort of saying, all right, let's change this to a string, and let's do that in many different ways, and we'll split it up, and we'll cut the string, and we'll add labels and do all kinds of fun stuff. Well, of course, this is going to be slow. some of the slowest calculations that you can use are actually the type conversion. So whether you're changing to a string to numeric, numeric to string, whatever sort of changing it to a date, those are the slowest calculations. So if you can avoid doing that, you can sort of build out a much better visualization, much more performant visualization. So instead, the better option is just to create two separate calculations. So now I have one that will be labeled for a percentage, and I've got another that's basically the same calculation that is just for the dollar sign, and I can just take these two values and replace them. And because I've done my formatting ahead of time, they will dynamically change, and it just flips the two values here. And when one is not selected, it returns a null value. This is a faster, easier way to do it, and it is more performant under the current circumstances that we're working with. Let's see what else I've got for tips here. So I'm just going to go back, and we are going to stop share, and let's just do a straight up desktop showing. So we've got, you know, those are, oh, aliases. That's aliases versus a new dimension. I could cover that off. I want to just hit my favorite one. So another one that I see all the time, again, things that I'm guilty of when I worked with Tableau is aliases. And let's see if I have the calculation saved here. There it is. Actually, I think I might just have saved it right in the worksheet. So like, right, one of the things we've seen is like, if a category is equal to technology, then show, else hide. And then we would place this on filters and select show. Well, we've added an extra step. We are now saying like, run this Boolean and then do a calculation, and then we'll filter on it. It's one extra step. The easiest thing to do would just say category is equal to technology, and you just place this on filters and select true, and you've sort of solved your problem the exact same way with one fewer calculation. Another one that I've used quite often is like, I'll have a parameter to select the granularity of a day and time. But one thing that you should know is that you can actually insert a parameter inside of a calculation. So I could, instead of saying day, week, month, quarter, I can just place that right inside the calculation, say again, saving an extra step. And I guess the story here is that, you know, if you can avoid an extra calculation, go and try to find a way to do that. A couple others is like, don't overthink your if statements when you're writing them. The first thing that you should do when you write an if statement is think about what the most common member of that if statement is. If I'm writing an if statement on subcategory here, I'm going to start my if statement by saying, if subcategory is equal to binders, then do something, and to save copiers is if it's equal to copiers, do something as well. Oh, am I all done working? Almost. I'm talking to a few people.
All done now.
All done? Well, you heard it. We're going to have to wrap up very shortly. Let me just wrap up since I've got the, a last couple. I really do want to cover these. Is we have calculations. A lot of folks use the attribute function because it's there and you're like, oh, I've got a dimension and I need to put it on a view, and it could be, you know, I want to render a mark in a certain way. Well, when you use the attribute function, just know that it's also sort of doing this whole underlying calculation that you see here. It's saying if min is equal to max, then return the min, else return a star. And that's why you see the star show up when you have more than one dimension showing up, because the min and max won't be equal to each other. But you haven't got an extra calculation here. If you really know that it doesn't matter about the star, you can just select min or max. They're actually going to perform a faster calculation in the background. And then, you know, speed round here is, you know, use the date parts of date trunc to date name, date part over month and year, much faster. And then, you know, in my potpourri section here is avoid nesting LODs and table calculations beyond 3 levels, especially with table calculations. When you get past 2, you're really, you're playing with fire. It's a lot of experimentation that you're sort of going down, and it's easy to also mess something up. And then nesting with LODs, you can get a little bit deeper with those, but just know that those are running essentially separate queries every single time. So if you've got nested LODs, you're essentially having to process data a number of times over. Finally, my actual speed round, for filters. If you have the same filter on every sheet, use an extract filter. If you have filters that are, if you have filters, when you click on something, it takes 10 seconds to load, use the apply button. Should you use context filters to increase speed? Not really. The actual answer is it depends, but for the most part, it's not really. Should you use, there's a little section in filter, relevant in filters for relevant values. Should you use it? Actually, it can slow performance because you've got to do some processing to figure out what's relevant and what's not. Even though it looks nice, it can slow performance. The now versus today, you should try to avoid. There's extra steps involved in there. Instead, use the last day or last moment of time in your data set. It will be faster. If dates are slow, because dates are basically the slowest thing, what should you do? You should load them in as a parameter using, right, you can load parameters in as the workbook loads, and then use that as a Boolean filter to say basically like, that is my parameter equal to a certain value, and it'll be way faster than an actual filter for dates themselves. Marks, just remember you're trying to minimize the number of marks that you're rendering. So if you're creating something with 100,000, 200,000 marks, or 50,000 or 10,000, whatever it is, like it's going to be slower. And then I've got some remember also table calculations in general are all rendered on the view after all the calculations have been created. So if you've got a lot of marks and you've got table calculations, they're going to run slower. And if you've got nested table calculations with lots of marks, that's likely where things are going to start breaking down. That's often where you probably need to come up with a different solution. Instead of using nested table calculations, there's got to be something else when you have a lot of marks. Alan's going to hate hearing this. That's why he does everything in Mapbox. Well, actually, he's not going to hate hearing it. That's why he does it in Mapbox. Avoid polygon rendering. It's a little bit slower. And then if you're really like trying to search for random things, you can remove legends. They technically will improve performance. And then my last note here is on viz and tooltips. First of all, I don't use tooltips. To me, they slow down performance. But if you have to have a viz in tooltips on your visualization, take the actual sheets that the viz in tooltips is rendering, place them on the visualization in negative pixel space. So you can like custom the negative pixels and say like -10, and make it 1 by 1 pixel. And just by having it on the view, it'll actually render faster as a result. And I guess because I was really short on time and I'm already way over, actually I'm only 2 minutes over, just remember 95% of the time it's just an accumulation of bad decisions. Use extracts, try to keep your data organized, your worksheets organized, minimize the number of drill downs you have, and as in filters, minimize marks, and just remember this order for your calculations. Booleans are the fastest, then numbers, strings, and finally dates. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Whew. All right. Thank you, Luke. And yeah, Kevin's giving the round of applause. I have literally heard Kevin Taylor tell me these things in multiple occasions on my workbooks. So, so thank you again. I took a screenshot of this. Too long, don't read. Will you share this presentation with us, or is it on your blog? Or
yeah. I'll send out for everybody to have this, and I'm supposed to write a blog post about it at some point, but finding time is another issue.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, maybe this will suffice for some folks. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. Anya, are you still with us? I see you said doesn't. Would you like to lead us in our end of tug meditation to zen us out for the evening?
If people are still into it, that would be awesome. I can't apparently share my screen. So
I'm good. Yeah, Luke has to stop.
I'm in my hammock. I'm good.
Still telling me no.
Luke has to stop sharing. There you go.
Yay! Let me see. Oh, let's see. There we go. I did want to share, while we were on the call, I built a Pride color palette. I just Googled it, and nobody apparently has a Pride color palette. So if anyone wants to add it to their TPS file, I can pop that into the chat. Or the QA, I guess. I can do it later. But anyhow, just thought that was fun. All right, everyone, I'm going to turn off my camera. And everyone's under a lot of stress, and I think we thought we were presenting last, and we didn't want to stress people out with more COVID stuff. So we thought it might be kind of fun to do a guided meditation on kind of relieving anxiety and finding joy in data viz. So for those of you that want to hang out, go for it. For those of you that are like, who is this trippy California? You're welcome to drop off. But so I'd like to invite everyone to just find a comfortable place to sit and close your eyes and just take a nice, deep, slow breath in. Deeper than you have taken all day so far. Focus on right now and give yourself permission to make yourself your first priority. There is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to be doing. Continue to take slow, deep breaths, making each inhale and exhale a little bit longer. Feel the journey of your breath through your body and notice where you may be holding stress or anxiety. Unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders, open your palms. If you notice something causing you stress or anxiety, acknowledge its presence and any judgment you may have made about it. And now give it permission to drop away. Let it go. You don't need it anymore. And direct your focus back to your breath. And now I want you to think of a time where you created a report or a dashboard that was useful and made someone really happy. It helped them do their job better, made a process more efficient, gave you some new and useful information, or opened up a dialogue. And think of the joy you received building and experiencing that. Breathe in that joy from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, letting it radiate through your entire being. And if it feels natural, allow yourself to smile even. What is the one thing you can learn or try or build today to allow you to continue to feel this way? Invite yourself to approach your current project with this new curiosity and joy. Give yourself permission to open up to the clarity and direction on what the very next step for you to take is to keep this joy. Not the next 5 or 10 steps, not all the steps to the end, just the very next step. You have everything you need right now. Let's take 3 more deep breaths together. Take a deep breath in, holding it at the top, then exhale. Take an even deeper breath than before and feel it weave in and out of your body. Then exhale it out. And now take your deepest breath yet. When you are ready, open your eyes. Thank you for joining us.
Well, what a wonderful way to end this joined Tableau user group with RDU Tug and the Twin Cities Tug. Thank you, Anya and Alan, for joining us from across the country. And thank you to Luke again. I know he's still here. Well, I know we have family responsibilities and all the fun things, but we are here now. And again, as I mentioned before, we are a community that only grows stronger together. So we are going to not just survive this, we are going to thrive in this. So I look forward to our next user group, the next time we get together virtually or in person. And Jim, did you want to say anything before we hop off?
Oh, just thanks for letting us crash the party. It was a great group. Yeah, thanks for letting us tag along.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you so much for having
Yes.
Alan and I joined.
Absolutely. Well, from all of us here in Raleigh, thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.